Hello everyone, and welcome to the 84th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring William D-FENS Foster from Falling Down. This story tells the tale of a man spiraling down a black abyss of self-pity and entitlement, a man whose anger and frustration emerges to terrorize dozens of people as he wallows in the wretched life he's created for himself. In this video, we're going to examine how this man arrived at this point, exploring how and why an average Joe like William Foster snapped to become a terror walking the streets of Santa Monica. Before we begin though, let's first talk about our sponsor for this video, Audible. As some of you may already know, I'm a big fan of Audible. Not only do I use Audible to find and listen to new and exciting titles in my free time, but having access to any book I need to read to cover these characters in spoken word form is incredibly helpful, as you can utilize Audible from anywhere and on virtually any device. Their expansive library is host to an unmatched selection of audiobooks and podcasts from any genre you can think of, and Audible also produces their own original content, a portion of which you can access totally free by signing up for their Audible Plus membership package, one that I highly recommend, as not only will you have access to these free choices each month, but you'll also earn a credit each month that you can use towards anything in the Audible library. Recently, I've been binging a childhood favorite, the Old Kingdom series, the story of a girl plunged into a strange world of magic and necromancy, searching for her lost father, and you should definitely check it out after you sign up. Right now, you can try Audible free for 30 days by going to audible.com/Vile and using the code VILE at checkout, or by texting VILE to 500-500. So go to audible.com/Vile and use the code VILE at checkout, or text VILE to 500-500 to start enjoying some old favorites and pick up some new titles for your library today. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring this video. Now, without further ado, let's begin. William appears to us as the very definition of your average, run-of-the-mill, milquetoast office worker. Rimmed glasses, business casual dress, a flat-top haircut, pocket protector, and a dull briefcase. You couldn't paint a better picture of mediocrity if you tried. Now, there isn't anything wrong with dressing like that, but it's an important component in William's story that adds to the misery he's experiencing by the time this film begins. William is a middle-aged, unemployed divorcee past his prime who lives with his mother and, in accordance with his lack of profession, seems to be in a bad spot financially. On top of that, he has a poor relationship with his ex-wife, one that stems from the fact that he has a bad temper that caused her to place a restraining order on him, and because of that, he's been unable to see his young daughter for an unknown amount of time. All of these things are certainly good enough reasons for a person to be experiencing a rough spot mentally, but there's one thing that underpins everything that has gone wrong, or William has perceived to have gone wrong in his life: change, and we can see his vehement distaste for it in every scene we find him in. In the opening scene of the film, we find William in his aged, run-down economy car in the middle of traffic on a sweltering California day. All around him is a cacophony of sounds: children on a nearby bus shouting out the windows, irritable commuters screaming at one another, the grating sounds of heavy construction equipment, the chopping of a helicopter overhead, and the buzzing of insects flitting about his person. In a state of sensory overload, William becomes fed up with the whole ordeal and abandons his car in the middle of the road to begin what would be a day entirely dedicated to releasing all of his pent-up frustration. Entering a convenience store occupied by a less-than-friendly cashier, William asks this man for change, but he refuses and tells him that he needs to buy something in order to get his change. And when William comes up to the counter with a can of Coke and learns that it costs 85 cents rather than the 50 he was hoping for, he proceeds to argue with Mr. Lee, berating him for his accent and telling him that he should give him the soda for the price he wants because, after all, his country has sent an exorbitant amount of money to Mr. Lee's, so the least he could do is repay him by offering him a discount in his store. Lee understandably becomes irritated with William and asks him to leave, which he refuses to do, and that causes Lee to take out a bat in an effort to chase him from his store. However, this only sends William into a state of berserk rage, and he proceeds to wrestle the bat from him after slamming his foot into his chest, after which he begins going on a tirade about the prices Lee is charging in his store as he smashes his merchandise to pieces. And even after committing these crimes and demolishing this man's store, William becomes offended when Lee tells him to take the money and go, incredulous at the fact that this man has dared to color him as a thief. So William pays for his drink with his approved price and leaves the store to place the call he had needed the change for. But upon doing so, he finds that the line is busy. Choosing to take a break from his already quite active morning, William heads to a nearby abandoned lot to look at the classifieds and enjoy his beverage, taking the time to patch a hole in his shoe with a sheet of newspaper. However, this moment of peace was never meant to last, as the spot William had chosen for his respite was unfortunately in the heart of gangland, and in accordance with being in that spot, he's approached by two gangsters gangsters looking to chase him out of their territory. To his credit, he tries to defuse the situation amicably, but I'm sure he appeared to these two as an easy mark that they could harass as they pleased. However, William was far from being in any sort of mood to handle opposition from anyone, and he proceeds to defend himself, and rightfully so, by beating the two of them with a bat he took from the convenience store, afterwards claiming their butterfly knife for himself. After this ordeal, William calls his ex-wife again and has a forceful and angry conversation with her, where he declares his intent to come to his daughter's birthday party, no matter what she has to say about it. A dark mission that is revealed to be the motivation for everything that has happened in this story thus far. Upon hanging up the phone, the two men William had fought with earlier drive up and attempt to mow him down, killing or wounding several people in the process, and crashing their car in their escape attempt. And throughout this event, William merely stood by, acting as if nothing at all were happening around him. Now, obviously, William isn't directly responsible for the deaths or injuries that occurred during this exchange, but he's certainly indirectly responsible, as none of these people would have had to experience a spray of bullets that morning had he not began his own morning with a spree of violence. Waltzing over to the crashed car of his would-be killers, William picks up the machine gun of the surviving man and begins to taunt him, telling him that he missed, and afterwards firing a bullet into the car behind him, after which he proceeds to shoot him in the leg, telling him how easy it was and to take some shooting lessons before he walks off with a duffel bag full of weapons. He then attempts to board a bus, along the way eyeing various homeless people and people of other races as he's pushed back from the throng of people attempting to board the bus. Choosing to walk instead, he's followed by a con man who attempts to weasel money out of him by feeding him a fake story, an exchange that only serves to irritate him further than he already was. William finally acquiesces to this man's declaration that he somehow owes him money by handing him his briefcase, after which we learn that all he had within it was a paltry lunch consisting of a small sandwich, an apple, and some carrot sticks. Without a lunch to satisfy his hunger, William heads to the local Whammy Burger so he can enjoy a delicious breakfast, but he's only met with more disappointment when the cashier and manager refuse him his breakfast because it's already past 11:30. He proceeds to go on yet another tirade, this time one fueled by the bullets of his recently acquired machine gun, only to change his mind and order lunch instead, complaining about the state of the burger he receives as false advertising. Resuming his journey towards his ex-wife's house, William stops along his way to purchase a musical unicorn snow globe as a present for his daughter, and further down the way, he attempts to call his ex-wife once again, finding only a busy line. After which, he's confronted by an angry man who is waiting to use the phone booth, and to teach him a lesson in patience, he proceeds to unload his machine gun into the booth. Looking to replace his worn-out shoes, he next makes his way to an army surplus store, which just so happens to be manned by a neo-Nazi in all his racist, homophobic, and misogynistic charm. Sensing a kindred spirit in William, this man goes so far as to hide him from the police and reveal to him his secret stash of war memorabilia, complete with his very own swastika claws. Once he discovers that this man believes he and William are allies, he again becomes offended at being lumped into a group that he doesn't believe himself to be a part of. And yet another violent confrontation ensues when this man learns of William's opposition to him, threatening to turn him into the police, which invariably causes William to stab this man to get away from him. However, he takes it a step further by giving him a lesson in constitutional rights before shooting him in cold blood. And while this man surely won't be missed by too many people, this murder was still unjustified. Afterwards, he once again calls his ex-wife, informing her that he's still on the way and that he's past the point of no return, likening his mission to that of stranded astronauts, ending the conversation by remarking that in some South American countries, it's still legal to kill your wife if she insults you. Now clad in military fatigues, William resumes his journey through Santa Monica, coming across a traffic jam in front of a construction site, much like the one he had found himself in earlier that day. Knocking out a man shouting at the other commuters. As he walks down the street, William challenges one of the construction workers to tell him what they're fixing on this street, as he had driven down this street not but 2 days ago, and it was in good condition then, stating that they're only working on the road in order to meet their monthly quota. And to keep the construction companies from holding him and the rest of the upstanding citizens hostage, he decides he's going to launch a rocket at their truck, only instead he misfires and sends it careening through the sewers, blowing up a crane once it reaches its destination. The next target of William's rampage is an old man who tries to shoo him from his golf course by hitting a ball at him, and in response, he rants to him about how all the acreage of their course is being used to entertain a few silly old men, when it should be occupied by playing children and a petting zoo. Then to drive home his point, he proceeds to shoot their golf cart, which causes the man he was arguing with Frank to suffer a heart attack, and because his heart medication at that moment is rolling down the hill to a watery grave, Frank ends up meeting the same fate as his golf cart. Fleeing from the scene, we next find William in the backyard of a beautiful manor where a family is currently enjoying a barbecue. A family who he discovers are not the tenants of his home, but rather the owner's caretakers. Taking them hostage, he's insulted when he finds out that this mansion is owned by a plastic surgeon, lamenting on how he apparently entered the wrong profession, citing that he's no longer economically viable, a relic of the past. And he then becomes offended once again when the patriarch of this family dares to suggest that he might hurt his family. But the most important thing about this scene is what William says after he's fantasized about his daughter's birthday party. That being, that once he reunited with them, things would go back to the way they used to be. The way things used to be. This simple phrase is the entire reason behind everything William has done and said in this film. It used to be a world uncrowded, where the traffic was minimal. It used to be that the man standing behind a register spoke without an accent, and his goods were reasonably priced. It used to be that a man could sit on a pile of rubble without worrying about whether or not he was going to be strong-armed for being in a gang's territory. It used to be that a man could walk through the park without seeing scores of homeless people or minorities wandering about selling produce. It used to be that a man could walk into a restaurant and transact his business on a human level without the stink of corporatism ruining an otherwise trivial affair. It used to be that a man could have a disagreement with another without violence entering the equation. It used to be that a man was recognized for his contribution to his country and rewarded appropriately for it. A man used to be treated like a fellow human being rather than the scum walking upon the golden lands of the rich. It used to be that the best ice cream spot on the block was just that, an ice cream spot, and not a new age southwestern store. But most of all, it used to be that William Foster had a job and a family. A life worth living in the company of the people he loved, a life of respect and dignity. But now all that remains to William Foster are memories. Memories that he desperately wishes to revive. Memories that haunt him in his mother's squalid home as he lay staring at the ceiling in his single-length bed. But what must hurt most of all is the realization that William comes to at the end of the film. After watching old home movies and witnessing his own abusive practices in action, he escapes from his former home, shooting Detective Torres as he flees to the pier, where he frantically tries to rekindle old family ties. And knowing that was an impossibility, William planned to do the unthinkable, end his life and the life of his family, as he was never quite willing to part with them. Only in death could they ever hope to escape him. Thankfully, William realizes in the end that, try as he might, his time has passed, and the harm he has wrought on dozens of individuals over the course of his rampage has colored him as the bad guy. A bad guy who the true William would never allow to come within speaking distance of the ones he loved. So it's here on this pier, where in times past he spent days with his family, that William meets his end. And at this end, who was William Foster? He was a man who watched time pass him by and leave him in the dust. A man who wanted so desperately to achieve and maintain the American dream, a good job, a loving family, and a world that catered to his needs. William at one time had these things, but his inherent flaws slowly drove them away from him. His anger terrifying his wife and infant daughter, and his disgust for a world he never wanted to live in, growing inside him as the days passed him by, so much so that he would bring death, injury, and misery to numerous people over the course of a single day. The unfortunate truth is that there are a lot of people out there like William, people who remember how things used to be, what the world was like when they were young and full of happiness. But as sure as time will march on, things will change, and no matter how much you whine and complain, time will ensure that some things will never be the same again. Add in the fact that you've brought destruction to your own dream through your actions, and you find yourself facing a person who has nothing left but memories and anger. A person who unfortunately can't get past one of the immovable truths of sentient existence. That being that there are good times and bad times. That's life, but the benefit of life is that things can always get better. You just need to have the drive to make it so. And if you can find it in yourself to push onwards, it undoubtedly will. Or you can succumb to the pressures of the world. You can become so disillusioned with all that reality has to offer that you transform into a hollow shell of a person, one that's destined to fall down into a bottomless pit of evil. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on William? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below, and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, I've recently launched new merchandise that features this beautiful design you're seeing on screen now that I'm sure a lot of you will love. You can find a link to my store down below to learn more. A big thank you to all of my subscribers and to my patrons, and a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and Reddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. Lastly, if you or anyone you know has suffered or is currently suffering abuse, you're never alone, and there's always help to be had, and I'll link some resources in the description that you can use to find the help you or your loved ones may need. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.